The Earth stood united under a single government after centuries of conflict and division. Humans had advanced far beyond the solar system, exploring distant galaxies and encountering alien civilizations. Some were peaceful, others, like the Imperial Alliance from the Andromeda Galaxy, sought conquest. Earth, however, had spent centuries preparing for the inevitable moment when an alien force would try to dominate it. The Imperial fleet, led by Admiral Xeros, arrived in Earth's solar system with a towering armada of ships. The vessels stretched for miles, with their massive angular forms designed to inspire fear. Each ship bristled with advanced weaponry, capable of obliterating entire planets. The Imperials believed Earth would be an easy conquest, a small, fragile planet populated by an inferior species. From the bridge of his command ship, Xeros stared at the blue and green orb in the distance. "Send the message," he commanded, his voice cold. "Let them know they have one chance to surrender." As the Imperial communication system beamed a message to Earth, humanity braced itself. The United Earth Defense Fleet, a coalition of human ships, hovered in Earth's orbit, cloaked and ready. On the ground, every major city prepared for an onslaught that could come from space at any moment. Captain Maya Thorne, one of Earth's most decorated officers, stood on the deck of her flagship, the Dauntless, watching the Imperial fleet with a steely determination. Beside her, her second-in-command, Lieutenant Colin Hayes, studied the enemy with grim focus. "They've arrived," Maya said, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. Colin nodded. "They'll expect us to surrender. They think we're weak." Maya's eyes flicked to the readouts on her command screen, detailing Earth's defense systems. They have no idea what's waiting for them. In orbit, Earth's defense grid activated, cloaking the planet behind a web of stealth fields, energy shields, and automated drones. For centuries, humanity had poured its resources into the development of an impenetrable defense system. The Earth Defense Network, EDN, an artificial intelligence that coordinated all planetary defenses, had been designed to think faster than any human, analyze threats instantly, and respond with lethal precision. As the Imperial fleet drew closer, the cloaked human ships moved into formation. Maya stood at the helm of the Dauntless, watching the Imperial fleet drift toward Earth's defenses. "Hold your positions," she ordered. "Wait for the right moment." The Imperials, confident in their superior numbers and technology, began to launch a wave of scout ships to test Earth's defenses. Admiral Xeros smirked. He had seen countless planets crumble before the might of his armada. But as the scouts crossed into Earth's defense perimeter, something unexpected happened. Before they could even transmit back data, a storm of autonomous drones emerged from the void. These drones, small but deadly, moved with blinding speed, intercepting the scouts and dismantling them in mid-flight with pinpoint accuracy. Xeros scowled. "What is this?" "Sir, we've lost contact with the scout ships," reported an officer. "They were destroyed by automated systems." Xeros's expression hardened. So, Earth has teeth after all. Back on the Dauntless, Maya watched as the enemy's first wave was obliterated by Earth's defenses without a single shot fired from the human fleet. "They're testing us," she muttered, "but they're not ready for what's coming next." The Imperial fleet responded swiftly to the loss of their scouts. Xeros, frustrated by the resistance, ordered the full armada to prepare for an assault. Massive warships began charging their primary weapons, ready to unleash devastation on Earth. But before they could fire, Earth's defense grid came to life. Energy shields, invisible until now, shimmered into existence, forming a protective barrier around the planet. From hidden platforms on the Moon and Mars, powerful defense cannons unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The beams sliced through the void of space, striking Imperial warships with surgical precision. On the Dauntless, Maya watched as Earth's defenses ripped through the enemy fleet. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. Colin stood beside her, his expression tense. "They'll adapt. We need to strike before they find a weakness." Maya nodded. "Prepare the fleet. It's time to take the fight to them." With that, the United Earth Defense Fleet uncloaked. Human warships, sleek and built for speed, emerged from their hidden positions. The Dauntless led the charge, followed by a swarm of fighter jets and drone carriers. Earth's fleet may have been smaller, but each ship was equipped with cutting-edge technology and advanced AI, allowing them to move and react faster than the Imperials. As Maya gave the order to attack, the human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. The battle for Earth had begun. The space around Earth became a war zone. Human ships weaved through the larger, slower Imperial vessels, striking weak points with calculated precision. The Imperial fleet, though massive, struggled to counter the agility and coordination of Earth's defense forces. On the bridge of his flagship, Xeros grew furious. How is this possible? They're just humans. Earth's ships, led by the Dauntless, danced around the Imperial armada, using their superior speed and advanced weapons to cripple the enemy's massive warships. But despite their success, the Imperials had numbers on their side. Xeros knew he had to change the game. "Prepare the superweapon," he ordered, his voice low with anger. "If we can't beat them with brute force, we'll destroy the planet itself." The Imperial flagship housed a weapon capable of turning planets to ash, a weapon Xeros had used before on countless worlds. As the ship began charging its superweapon, a surge of energy lit up the starry void. On the Dauntless, Maya's sensors picked up the energy spike. Her heart raced. "They're going to destroy Earth." "We need to take that ship out now," Colin urged. Maya's mind raced. They had to stop the flagship before the weapon fired. "Get me a direct line to all ships," she said. As her fleet regrouped, Maya laid out the plan. They would focus all their firepower on the Imperial flagship. It was a desperate gamble, but they had no choice. The future of Earth depended on it. The human fleet gathered its forces and set its sights on the massive Imperial flagship, a towering fortress in space that dwarfed even the largest ships in their armada. Maya stood on the bridge of the Dauntless Asterisk, her eyes locked on the target. The ship's sleek, angular design hummed with power as it pushed through the darkness of space, leading the charge. Around her, the other ships in the fleet began their final assault, launching missiles, plasma bolts, and energy blasts toward the enemy ship. But the Imperial flagship's shields absorbed the incoming fire like a sponge, rippling with energy but holding firm. Inside the Imperial flagship, Xeros watched from his command seat as the power levels of the ship's superweapon climbed steadily. His face was a mask of confidence, his lips curling into a sneer. "Let them come," he muttered, his voice filled with contempt. "Their resistance is pointless. Their planet is doomed." Maya knew this was the final moment. The battle for Earth hung in the balance. If the humans failed here, there would be no coming back. The Imperial fleet had already devastated several key defense points, and the superweapon on the flagship was almost fully charged. It would only take one strike to obliterate Earth's atmosphere, and with it the last stronghold of human life. She turned to Colin, the tactical officer standing beside her. His face was etched with determination, but there was fear in his eyes. Everyone knew what was at stake. "Colin," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them, "we need to overload their shield generator, or nothing we throw at them will get through." Colin's fingers danced across his control panel, pulling up data on the Imperial ship's defenses. Their shields are reinforced with a multi-phase energy barrier. It's designed to absorb energy attacks, but if we hit it with enough concentrated firepower, we can overload it. It's risky, but it's our only chance. Maya nodded, determination hardening her resolve. "Then we have no choice. Get us close and prepare to fire everything we've got." The Dauntless Asterisk surged forward, its engines roaring as it cut through the void of space. The rest of the human fleet fell in behind, protecting their leader as they charged toward the enemy flagship. The sky was a blur of light as the two fleets exchanged fire, Imperial warships pouring laser fire and missile volleys into the human ships. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, debris from destroyed vessels spinning off into space. Human ships sacrificed themselves, throwing their hulls into the path of incoming fire to shield the Dauntless Asterisk as it pushed toward the enemy's heart. Inside the Dauntless Asterisk, the tension was palpable. The crew worked in silence, their focus unshakable. Everyone knew this could be their last stand, but no one wavered. Maya watched the Imperial flagship grow larger on the screen in front of her, the massive silhouette blotting out the stars. She could feel the weight of every life depending on her, and it only made her more determined to succeed. "We're almost in range," Colin called out, his hands moving rapidly over his controls. "But their point defense systems are targeting us. We won't make it if we don't take them out." Maya's mind raced. They couldn't afford to slow down now. Divert power to shields and keep pushing forward. "I don't care how many of their ships are in our way. We are breaking through." The Dauntless Asterisk trembled under the strain of incoming fire, but it held together. Explosions rocked the ship, and warning lights flashed across the bridge as their shields were bombarded from all sides. But Maya refused to give up. They were so close. She could see the shield generator's energy signature now, flickering like a beacon on their targeting sensors. One final push, and they would have a shot. "Target the shield generator," Maya ordered, "and fire everything we have. Concentrate all weapons on that one point." The Dauntless Asterisk unleashed its full arsenal, plasma cannons roaring to life as streams of energy bolts lanced out from the ship. Missile pods fired in unison, sending dozens of warheads streaking toward the Imperial flagship's shield. The rest of the human fleet joined in, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. The combined firepower slammed into the flagship's shields, and for the first time, the massive ship began to show signs of strain. Sparks flew across the surface of the Imperial ship as the shield struggled to absorb the onslaught. The energy barrier flickered, destabilizing under the sheer force of the attack. Zeros felt a tremor beneath his feet as alarms blared on the Imperial bridge. "What is happening?" he snarled, spinning toward his engineers. "The shields are overloading, sir," one of them shouted, frantically working at his station. "They can't handle this much concentrated fire." Zeros' face twisted with rage. Divert more power. Do whatever it takes to hold them off. But it was too late. The human fleet's relentless barrage had pushed the shield beyond its limits. With a final, brilliant flash, the energy barrier collapsed, leaving the Imperial flagship vulnerable. Maya saw her moment. "Now," she shouted, "hit them with everything we've got." The Dauntless Asterisk and the remaining human ships unleashed another devastating volley, this time directly targeting the Imperial flagship's hull. Explosions rippled across the surface of the ship as the human firepower tore through its armor. Secondary explosions rocked the vessel as fuel lines and munitions stores ignited, sending plumes of fire and debris into space. Inside the flagship, Zero stumbled as the ship shook violently. "No!" he screamed, his eyes wild with disbelief. "This can't be happening." Maya watched as the massive ship began to falter, its engines flickering and its weapons falling silent. The human fleet had done the impossible. They had broken through the defenses of the most powerful ship in the Imperial Armada. But it wasn't over yet. The flagship's superweapon was still online, and its charge levels were dangerously close to full. If they didn't act fast, the ship could still fire on Earth, and the entire planet would be lost. "Colin, can we disable the superweapon?" Maya asked, her voice tense. Colin scanned the readings. "It's too late to stop the charge, but we can force a reactor overload. If we can trigger a meltdown in their power core, the entire ship will go up in flames." Maya nodded. "Do it. We're taking that ship down, no matter what." With a few quick commands, Colin initiated the sequence. The human fleet pulled back as the Imperial flagship's systems began to spiral out of control. Inside the ship, Zero screamed in fury, realizing his defeat. His empire, his weapon, his entire fleet. All of it was crumbling before him. The reactor core went critical, and a brilliant explosion ripped through the center of the flagship. The blast spread outward in a wave of fire and debris, consuming the ship in a matter of seconds. The shockwave rippled through space, sending the human ships reeling, but they held their formation. As the last remnants of the Imperial flagship disintegrated, Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The battle was over. Earth was safe. For now. The moment the Imperial flagship's shields dropped, Maya knew the time had come. "Fire the main cannon," she shouted, her voice carrying the weight of every sacrifice that had led to this moment. The Dauntless responded instantly, its massive forward cannon charging with a blinding glow before unleashing a concentrated beam of energy. The blast shot across the void, striking the heart of the Imperial flagship. For a fraction of a second, everything seemed to stop. Then the beam hit its target. The blast punched through the armor of the flagship like a spear through cloth, ripping through the ship's core. For an instant, the flagship's silhouette hung in space, stark and silent, and then it erupted in a blinding explosion. The force of the blast was so powerful it momentarily outshone the stars, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. Imperial ships, caught in the wake, were thrown off course, spinning out of control as their formations shattered. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Maya stood rooted in place, her eyes locked on the scene unfolding before her. The Imperial fleet, once an unstoppable force that had threatened to destroy everything she had sworn to protect, was falling apart. The flagship, the symbol of Imperial dominance, was gone, reduced to nothing more than a rapidly expanding cloud of debris. The remaining enemy ships, now without leadership or coordination, drifted aimlessly, some still exchanging sporadic fire, but most already breaking formation, their captains scrambling to retreat. "We did it," Colin whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Around him, the crew of the Dauntless began to cheer, but Maya remained silent, her expression grim. "Have we?" she murmured to herself. The truth of the moment weighed heavily on her. Yes, they had won the battle. Yes, the Imperial fleet was in disarray, but at what cost? She tapped a command into her console, pulling up the tactical display of the battlefield. The damage was staggering. Dozens of human ships were gone, their blips on the display blinking out one by one as they were confirmed lost. Many others were crippled, barely holding together after the relentless pounding they had taken from the enemy. Earth's orbital defenses, which had already been strained to their limits by the initial wave of the Imperial attack, were battered and on the verge of collapse. Even now, the few remaining defense platforms struggled to maintain their integrity, venting atmosphere and power as fires raged within. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The victory was real, but so was the price they had paid. Thousands of lives had been lost in the battle, brave men and women who had given everything to protect their home. And while the Imperial fleet was retreating, it wasn't fully destroyed. The threat wasn't over. As the celebrations around her died down, Maya turned to Colin. "Status report. What's left of the fleet?" Colin glanced at his monitor, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's not good. We've lost nearly half of our ships. The remaining vessels are damaged, some beyond repair. Earth's orbital defenses are barely functional, and we've picked up significant damage to several of our key space stations. We won, but we're in no shape for another battle." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "And the Imperials?" "They're falling back, scattered," Colin replied. "But there are still a few intact ships regrouping at the edge of the system. It's possible they could launch a counterattack, but without their flagship and centralized command, they're disorganized. I think they're pulling out for good, at least for now." Maya frowned. "For now," she echoed. "That's the key, isn't it? We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. The Empire is still out there. They'll regroup, rebuild, and come for us again." Colin nodded solemnly. "They will, but we've shown them that we can fight back. We've bought ourselves time, at least." Maya turned back to the main viewport, staring out at the debris-strewn battlefield. The Imperial ships were retreating, vanishing into the blackness of space, but the destruction they had wrought was all too real. The wreckage of human and Imperial ships alike floated in the void, twisted and broken, a grim reminder of the cost of war. Her thoughts turned to the people on Earth, the civilians who had waited in terror as the battle raged above them. They would be celebrating now, believing that the worst was over, that they were safe. But Maya knew better. The Empire would not give up so easily. They would return, and next time, Earth might not be so lucky. "We need to prepare," Maya said, her voice firm. This is just the beginning. We have to rebuild our defenses, strengthen our fleet. The Empire will come back, and we need to be ready when they do. Colin nodded, though he looked weary. It won't be easy. With the losses we've taken, it'll take time to recover. We don't have a choice, Maya replied. We have to make the most of the time we've bought. She turned to leave the bridge, but paused as she caught sight of the faces of her crew. They were tired, their uniforms scorched and their eyes hollow with the strain of battle. They had given everything in this fight, and Maya felt a surge of pride and gratitude for each of them. They had stood with her through the darkest moments, and together they had won an impossible victory. But even as she felt that pride, there was a gnawing emptiness inside her. She couldn't forget the faces of the men and women who had been lost. Friends, comrades, people who had believed in the same cause she did, and who had sacrificed their lives to protect it. Maya thought of Captain Harris, of Lieutenant Jenna, and of the countless others who would never return. She clenched her fists, a wave of sorrow washing over her. Victory had come at such a high price. As she stepped off the bridge, Colin called after her, "Maya, where are you going?" "To the comms deck," she replied without turning. "I need to speak to Earth's leaders. They need to know what's happened up here, and what's coming next." Maya's boots echoed on the metal floor as she made her way down the dimly lit corridor toward the comms deck. The silence was deafening after the cacophony of battle. She passed several crew members along the way, each of them offering her a respectful nod or salute, but their eyes were heavy with exhaustion. When she arrived at the comms deck, the technician on duty stood and saluted her. "Captain, the link to Earth's High Command is open." Maya stepped forward, her face grim as she activated the console. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the faces of Earth's highest-ranking officials. They looked relieved, but Maya knew that relief would be short-lived. "Captain Maya," one of the officials began, "we've heard of your victory. You and your fleet." "We didn't win without losses," Maya interrupted. "The battle is over, but we've lost too many ships, too many people. Earth's defenses are hanging by a thread, and the Empire will return. We need to rebuild, strengthen our forces immediately." The officials exchanged nervous glances. "I understand, Captain," one of them replied, "but the people of Earth—" "The people of Earth don't need comforting lies," Maya snapped. "They need to know the truth. They need to be prepared for what's coming next." There was a long pause. Finally, one of the officials spoke up. "You're right, Captain. We'll begin mobilizing resources immediately. The world owes you and your fleet a debt of gratitude." Maya nodded curtly. "Do what you must, but don't forget the cost of this victory." As the transmission ended, Maya slumped against the console, her mind heavy with the weight of all that had been lost. Victory had come, but at a terrible price, and in the silence that followed, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles were still yet to come. The battlefield was quiet now, the remnants of the Imperial fleet scattered across the cold void of space, retreating into the darkness from which they came. The immediate threat to Earth had been vanquished, and the victorious human fleet stood battered but unbroken. Back on Earth, the news of the Imperial defeat spread like wildfire, igniting celebrations across every continent. From the streets of New York to the rooftops of Tokyo, humanity rejoiced. The world had been united in fear, and now it was united in victory. But as the cheers echoed below, aboard the Dauntless, Maya found herself standing alone on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. The exhilaration of victory was tempered by the knowledge that this was only a temporary respite. She felt a deep sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced extinction and triumphed, but Maya was no stranger to the complexities of war. She knew that while they had won this battle, the greater war was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and the Empire was only one of its many dangers. Other forces lurked in the darkness, unknown, and perhaps even more powerful. The Empire had been the most immediate threat, but the galaxy was full of opportunists, and the collapse of the Imperial fleet could invite new enemies to Earth's doorstep. Maya's thoughts were interrupted as Colin approached her, his steps soft but purposeful. "Maya," he said gently, The crew is asking for you. They want to hear from their captain." Maya turned to face him, her face unreadable for a moment before a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She nodded. "I'll be right there," she replied, though her mind still lingered on the vast unknowns that lay ahead. Colin hesitated for a moment, sensing her unease. "We've been through hell and back," he said softly. "You've led us through the impossible. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Maya's smile grew warmer, and she gave him a grateful nod. "I know," she said, "but it's not over, Colin. The Empire is wounded, but they're not dead. They'll rebuild, and others will see this victory and wonder if Earth is ripe for the taking." Colin's brow furrowed slightly, but he nodded. "Maybe, but for now, we've shown the galaxy that we're not an easy target. They'll think twice before coming for us." Maya sighed, her gaze drifting back to the stars. "I hope you're right," she murmured, "but hope alone won't protect us. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Back on Earth, the mood was drastically different. Streets were filled with people celebrating, dancing, singing, embracing one another in shared relief. Humanity had come together in a way that hadn't been seen in centuries. National borders seemed to blur as people united under a single cause: survival. Monuments and landmarks were illuminated in honor of the brave men and women who had fought in the battle for Earth's survival. The sense of triumph was palpable, and for the first time in a long time, the future seemed bright. In the United Earth headquarters, the leaders of the planet gathered for an emergency meeting. The war had left Earth's defenses crippled, and while the immediate threat had passed, they knew Maya was right. This was just the beginning. The task of rebuilding Earth's defenses and preparing for whatever threats lay ahead was urgent. Resources would need to be diverted, alliances strengthened, and new technologies developed. The atmosphere in the meeting room was a mixture of relief and determination. The victory had galvanized humanity, and the sense of urgency to protect their hard-won freedom was palpable. The United Earth President stood at the head of the table, addressing the assembled officials. "We've won a great victory today," the President began, "but we must not be complacent. The Empire will return, and there are other dangers out there, dangers we have yet to even comprehend. We must take this moment of unity and build on it. We must prepare for the future." Across the table, military leaders nodded in agreement. Plans were already being drafted to rebuild Earth's defenses, to fortify their colonies, and to expand their fleet. The message was clear: humanity would not be caught off guard again. Meanwhile, aboard the Dauntless, Maya stood in front of the assembled crew. The bridge, which had been a place of chaos and battle only hours earlier, was now filled with the tired but hopeful faces of the men and women who had fought so bravely at her side. They had been through so much, more than anyone had ever expected, and yet they had emerged victorious. The sense of camaraderie was strong, and Maya could feel it in the air. "Captain," one of the crew members called out, "a speech." Maya smiled, feeling a sense of humility wash over her. She wasn't one for grand speeches, but in this moment she knew they needed to hear from her. She stepped forward, her voice steady but quiet. "We did the impossible today," she began, her eyes sweeping over the faces of her crew. "We faced an enemy that outmatched us in every way. An enemy that believed they could crush us, that we were insignificant, but we proved them wrong." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew. "We fought with everything we had, and we won. But let's not forget those we lost. Our friends, our comrades. They fought and died for this victory. We owe it to them to carry on, to make sure their sacrifices weren't in vain." The mood in the room sobered, but the sense of pride remained. "We've proven that humanity can stand against the greatest threats the galaxy can throw at us. But we're not done. There are more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, and we will be ready." The crew erupted into applause, their spirits lifted by Maya's words. In that moment, they weren't just soldiers. They were survivors, defenders of their homeworld. They had proven that humanity was stronger than anyone had thought, even stronger than they had thought themselves. As the cheers died down, Maya turned back to the stars, her thoughts once again focused on the future. The galaxy was vast, and Earth's victory would not go unnoticed. The Empire would return. Of that she had no doubt. But there were other dangers too, unknown forces lurking in the far reaches of space, waiting for the right moment to strike. But for now, there was peace. Fragile, perhaps, but real. And in that peace, there was hope. Humanity had been tested in the crucible of war, and they had emerged stronger, more united. They had proven to the galaxy, and to themselves, that they were not a species to be trifled with. As Maya stood there, watching the stars twinkle in the distance, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Earth was unstoppable. No matter what challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them head-on. They would fight, they would endure, and they would prevail. Because that was what it meant to be human. What's next for Maya? Any new enemies coming? Months had passed since the battle for Earth, but the scars of the war were still visible. In orbit, the wreckage of both Imperial and human ships formed a floating graveyard, a somber reminder of the sacrifices made. On the planet below, cities were still rebuilding, their skylines marked with the jagged outlines of structures hastily reconstructed. The global celebration that had followed the victory had subsided, and the reality of what came next had set in. Maya stood in a quiet observation deck on the rebuilt Dauntless Asterisk, now docked at the newly completed orbital station, Sentinel. She gazed out at Earth, the planet bathed in soft blues and greens. From this vantage point, it looked peaceful, untouched by the ravages of war. But Maya knew better. The losses had been heavy. Millions of lives had been lost in the fighting, both on the ground and in space. Entire cities had been wiped out in the first strikes of the Imperial invasion. The cost of victory was still being tallied, and the weight of it sat heavily on her shoulders. A soft beep broke her reverie. Cullen appeared at her side, holding a datapad. He had been promoted to the rank of commander, now her second in command, a reflection of the trust they had built through their shared experiences. Reports from the outer colonies, he said quietly, handing her the datapad. No new sightings of Imperial ships. It looks like the retreat was genuine for now. Maya glanced at the pad, but didn't immediately read the contents. She had been inundated with reports like this for weeks, constant updates on the galaxy's state of affairs, ranging from diplomatic negotiations to intelligence briefings on potential threats. The galaxy, though temporarily quiet, was still restless. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked, not looking up. Colin exhaled slowly. "The Empire, maybe. But if they do, we'll be ready for them. This time, they know what we're capable of." Maya nodded but remained quiet. The Empire might return, but they weren't the only threat. In the wake of the Empire's retreat, power vacuums had opened across the galaxy. Factions, warlords, and pirate groups had begun to stir. Intelligence reports indicated that several of these groups had already begun to eye Earth's sector with interest, emboldened by the idea that the planet had exposed itself in the war. "They'll come eventually," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But when they do, we'll meet them head-on, just like before." Colin nodded, standing beside her in silence for a moment before speaking again. "The crew is gathering in the mess hall. They wanted you to join them." Maya smiled faintly, nodding. She had spent so much time strategizing and planning for the future, she had almost forgotten the people who had fought alongside her. The crew of the Dauntless Asterisk had become her family. They had seen the worst of war, and now they were rebuilding their lives, together. "I'll be there in a minute," she said, and Colin gave her a soft smile before turning to leave. After he left, Maya turned her gaze back to the stars. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Imperial fleet were regrouping. She imagined their leaders debating whether to strike back or lick their wounds. The galaxy had taken notice of Earth, and not just the Empire. Allies had emerged from unexpected corners. Nations and factions that had once been enemies had sent emissaries to Earth, seeking to forge alliances. At the same time, new enemies were undoubtedly watching, waiting for the perfect moment to test Earth's defenses again. But for now, there was a fragile peace. The fleet had expanded, the orbital defenses strengthened, and Earth had become a symbol of resistance in the galaxy. The lesson was clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight, survive, and thrive. Maya's thoughts drifted to the future, not just the battles that would come, but what Earth could become. The war had united the planet in a way that had never been possible before. Old rivalries had been set aside, and for the first time in centuries, humanity stood together as one. The asterisk dauntless asterisk and its fleet symbolized that unity, a reminder that when humans worked together, they were unstoppable. She took one last long look at Earth, then turned and headed for the mess hall. The path ahead was uncertain, but Maya knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, humanity was ready. As she walked, the echoes of war faded into the background, replaced by the promise of a new dawn. And with that promise came hope, hope that this victory, hard-won as it was, would be the foundation for something greater. A future where Earth wasn't just a survivor but a leader, guiding the galaxy toward a new era of peace and cooperation. For now, though, they would celebrate. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they would remember what they had fought for. And for Maya, that was enough. The stars awaited, but for the first time in a long time, they didn't seem so far away.